Hi, I'm here with Gareth of Legend Comics, and we're going to ask him a few questions today about his comic shop. First, Gareth, can you tell us a little bit of the history of Legends?
Certainly. Legends Comics opened November 7th, 1992. I was 19 years old when I got the job as the sidekick to a fellow named Grant Wilson, who was the original owner. And from 19 to when I was 30, I just worked with him and learned the ropes. He kind of taught me comic book etiquette and ethics and integrity and buying and selling and grading. Grading comics is really important, knowing the difference between a mint and a very fine comic. Um, what else? Yeah, just buying collections. So in 2003, he had enough and wanted to sell it, and I wanted to buy it. So I found a partner in Lloyd Chesley, and he and I have owned the store since 2003. And it's been in the same location for 23 years.
Oh, that's great. How does Legends compare to pop culture depictions of comic book shops that you've seen, like, say, The Big Bang Theory?
Um, there's stereotypes in the comic book world that I'm sure aren't true anymore, but the idea that a comic shop would have games and toys and hula hoops and stickers and posters, all that perfectly fine stuff. But my comic store is just comics. I just carry comics and graphic novels, old and new. Which is easy because people come in every day wanting Pokemon and whatever, and I don't carry any of that. But next door in the store up, I'm kind of sandwiched by two other different kinds of comic stores. So between all of us, we do kind of cater to everyone. But The Big Bang Theory gets kind of a lot of flack in the comic world because of its glossing over the idea of comics as a medium. It's like Comic-Con in San Diego isn't about comics anymore. It's about movies and stars and television and games and video games and stuff, which has nothing to do with comics. But comics were the gateway to a larger pop cultural community. So comics just seem to be... Comics and sci-fi kind of were the first fan bases that kind of broke out of the underground in the 60s and 70s. And then TV and the rest of pop culture followed suit. So comics just kind of feel like they were there first and maybe shouldn't be dragged down into the Beanie Baby trends that happen every year. I don't know. It's complaining for the sake of complaining rather than people come in and mimic the Big Bang Theory quite often, and it's perfectly fine. But that being said, a friend of mine wrote the theme song for that show, and it's probably done very well for him. And he buys comics, so awesome, Big Bang Theory.
So that's good.
It gets back into the culture, and very very good.
How have comic book shops changed over the years? Like, what's different and what's the same?
The big difference would be when we first started, there was 10 graphic novels that mattered, and the rest were monthly comics. And now there's, just to be caught up with good comics, just to read the trajectory of art from 1938 to now, there's a few hundred mandatory graphic novels. It's not like the mainstream literature where you have to read your way through centuries worth of classics. There's a finite amount, and yeah, that's the main difference, is that graphic novels have certainly taken over. And it's not about hunting down and collecting back issues so you read a story, because you just get them all in one book, and they're always in print. So if you wanted to get into Spider-Man, you don't have to hunt through basements. You just go and buy Spider-Man books. The other thing is women. 65 to 70% of our customers are women now, and I imagine that's a huge difference from when we began, when there would have been still the stigma of misogyny dripping from this horrible medium that was been tarred as pornography for young minds since the 50s, when the government cracked down on comics. There was lots of stigma that we've had to fight through, and now it's kind of a golden age. Everything's in print. The ugly, sordid past of gangsters running the comic book industry is gone, which I think I've done a lot of research into that. It was mostly to do with New York distributor systems, newspaper distributions, and a lot of gangsters were in charge of all that. So comics to get spread out had to pay gangsters and all this, and that is gone now because of the direct market. And nowadays, when a new graphic novel comes out, often mainstream bookstores like Monroe's or Bolin even get them before comic stores. So it kind of shows that comics have done a full turn, and they're part of mainstream now, which is cool.
Now, you invited me to the back room where you're doing some work for eBay. Can you tell me a little bit what's that part of your business about?
We have a basement that's full of comics, and we've just opened a second store, which is basically a warehouse, a two-story warehouse of vintage comics. We have 800,000 old comics, and whenever I have a chance, I put them on eBay. So they're not going to sell themselves.
So is that fairly lucrative?
It's kind of, they don't sell for what maybe they should sell for, or what they sell for on the wall, but I have so many of them, and the collections keep coming in that the best thing to do is just constantly move them through. And eBay is a good place to sell $5 to $10 comics and lots of them. Yeah, it's a lot of work packaging them and answering emails, but I've just hired a new girl to run the till while I'm back here doing this, and hopefully it'll be very lucrative.
Yeah. Finally, what do you love about your comic book shop?
The smell. Old comics have a smell that takes me back to 1978. There's a strong nostalgia to this. Discovering new artists, looking back and seeing. I've been going through letters pages a lot. If I have to count the pages of every comic that I go through, I don't get to read them, but I'll count the pages, make sure there's 36 of them in here. And every old comic has a letters page, and sometimes you see names of people. I came across a Fantastic Four from 1966 the other day. I had a letter from George R.R. Martin, who went on to write Game of Thrones.
Oh,
so it's
wow.
nice to see all these hundreds of letters written by people who would go on to be comic writers, comic artists, or television producers, people that are kind of full-time workers in the medium now, kind of got their start by writing into comics in the 50s, 60s, 70s. Very interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Comics, I just love, I really like 70s and 60s comics, the colors, the idea that that's an item, piece of pop culture. Hold on, I'm having a question asked of me. Go for it.
Something doesn't have a price on the front or the back. Where do I find that?
Like, what would it be?
Like a hardcover art booklet for Banksy.
Oh yeah, see on the big computer to the right, there might be a little note that says the Banksy prices.
Right. Thanks.
Yeah. Hey,
A
Sylvan.
working comic book shop.
Another question from somebody. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sylvan, you have a question?
There's a gift.
Oh, really? A gift from me?
A gift for you.
Did you get the fancy edition? You just didn't like it. Thank you. Thank you.
Working comic book shop.
Yeah.
That's great. It's great to see it so busy.
Yeah, it's been crazy today.
Yeah. Is there anything else you want to tell us about your comic book shop?
I love comics. I've been doing this for 23 years, whether I get paid or not, and half the time I don't get paid. I just put the money back into the store, and yeah, I love it. Every day, the most exciting part is the door opens, somebody comes in with a box. I don't know if it's going to be a vintage comic collection. That's where the excitement is. You never know what you're going to unearth. And every day somebody does some renovations in a house, and in the walls of 1930s houses are often stacks of old comic books and newsprint and movie posters, and that is potentially life-changing. I love that. And comics are the fastest growing segment of publishing. It's really nice for them to have finally crawled out of the gutter, crawled out of the ghetto, and are legitimate. It's a legitimate art form now, and happy to have been here, and I'm really glad that I fought all the naysayers throughout my childhood. Comics were so frowned upon when I was a kid, and I just loved them too much, so I fell into them and was happy to do it on my own. And now everyone comes and hangs out. It's very cool. And the cartooning classes that happen back here every week.
Oh, great.
We have 8 kids per class, and they draw, and we publish comics. We walk around on field trips to the comic store and get inspired. Comics are inspiring.
Yeah, I totally agree. Thank you so much for talking to us today. I really appreciate it.
My great pleasure. Thank you.